It's great to be here. This is an amazing festival. How happy are we to have this happening in our community? So many great events. It's a lot of work. Really appreciate it. I promised extravaganza, and it's going to build, just put it that way, as we go. And thank you all for coming out. First poem I want to read is from Tenuous Chapel, and this is in celebration of the toads. And some folks know I'm obsessed with toads, and at Eco Village, where I live, we have several ponds, and every spring around May 1st, the toads come out and migrate to the ponds, and then they have a big orgy. And it's amazing. And they sing for us, and then 6 weeks later or so, all these tiny, tiny little toads go hopping into the fields, thousands. So last night we were walking and we encountered several toads in the rain making their way to the pond, which was very heartening to see that they were out there. I always worry, are they really coming? So this is a poem for them. Al fresco. An unseasonably warm day, the house held its humor. We worked slowly, covered the peas and lettuce, kept indoors until the sun rolled out its reds, made gold and round everything once flat. We dined on the patio overlooking the pond where neighbors poked for toads. Does laughter release joy? They chant an orgy, those toads. Walking twilight, we're drawn to the peach of peepers, engage in a standoff with a leaf we thought was a bird, startle a woodcock. The air, warm air, is an embrace. We hope for a storm, feeling it near, the migration of toads to our neighborhood pond. The ones who come early chant for the others. I hear their singing as a call to prayer. That's for the toads. Good luck, toads. The next poem I want to read is from Ghost Fishing. I'll read one poem from that book. The book is poetry at the intersection of social justice and the environment, and it's a culturally diverse and politically engaged book. And this is my poem from that book. Requiem. Unable to sleep, the blankets wrapped in waves, waves as tall as dreams, the dream world trying to make sense of the waking. Strange dream of flooded rivers, entire cities underwater. Look how the dead float, hair blossoming on the surface, and the daily hustle into streets filled with water, going to get bread, going to get gasoline, and the dogs tied to lampposts, and the elders in chest-high water, waiting for rescue. And always the water rising. And we never know who it will take next, except that some houses are more sturdy than others, and some rescues come quicker or not at all. Remember when our beds were filled with oil? The sea was a whispering from an open door as that viscous dark came spilling up and out into every crevice of our dreams. How many days it gushed, all over our newspapers and into our laundry and hair. How it covered our hands and wouldn't wash out. We couldn't sleep at night, and the president ate shrimp and said none of this, though tragic, should interrupt our dinner. We who crawled once to these shores, having risen from single cells on the ocean floor, now standing in the midst of an invented world, Each morning, we step into our clothes, light the stove for breakfast, and those of us with privilege, we gas up and go. We who once had no claws, no hands, no way of grasping what we desired, and the waters keep seeping back in. Look how carefully zookeepers pack up those dolphins, airlifting them to safety. Massages to ease the stress. After the flooding, the house is so weak they are crumbling, and before the flooding also. Elsewhere, drought brings flame, fires consuming the west coast of our country, easy breathing only when the wind is blowing in the other direction. Firefighters fighting to protect the houses as animals come screaming from the flames. Give them water, foresters beg. Let them recover. Give me a dog who isn't drowning, a tree not in flames, a flag that is not betrayal. Teach me how to build an ark. Just diving right in. And this is a newer poem. On the anniversary of King's assassination. On the anniversary of King's assassination, walking the woods, I became dizzy, looking up at not one steady thing, the whole canopy waving, as if the sky could come undone. Hours later, an enormous hickory is flung hard across the length of our lawn, crown shattered. Earlier that day, my neighbor saying, "We should do something about that tree." Heavy winds blowing through America, dangerous weather. No one can say we didn't see it coming. Yael tells me hickory is medicine for helplessness. Dave says, okay, but the tree fell. And this is a series, I have a series in the manuscript of river crossing poems, and this is a river crossing poem, which are really just poems about different places. River crossing, Kentucky. The light on your hills is sadness that lowers into a kind of dusk that feels like undressing. My heart aches to cross your state line. I have not learned your language, nor have I trained my ear not to miss you. I've known your ghosts, lived next to strangers, watched the old man and his mules tend to slowness in the landscape, heard tell, made do, broke something trying to fix it. I've seen the mountain blown clear off to make some kind of progress out of nothing, been as flat inside as a landscape after the rush for coal. Watched the water turn brown and the snakes come up, lurked a while in the whippoorwill dark, clinging to every sound. It's Kentucky. Anybody ever been? This is a beautiful state. And this one is River Crossing Sticks. Crooned to by grandmother in between recitations of Revelations and I Told You So, rocking, cash crop of love sweet nothings we tell our children when the stars disappear and the searchlights wander. Trees split asunder with the weight of fruit, guns raised in salute, fat baby asleep in your arm. We loved every one of your crazies, opened our checkbooks for late night telethons, cried to your movies, believed in your heroes, kept a candle lit. The oil has a mouth, filled with crude. The oil has read our founding documents. The oil has rights. It burns beside waters, still sweet enough for our lips. So one of the things that working on ghost fishing did for me as a poet is in collecting all of these poems and from many different cultures and looking at the relationship between culture and the environment, it really helped me to think about my own culture. And I think as a white person, we often have our culture presented to us as this transcendent thing that's sort of invisible and not defined, and that idea that the poem is everybody's voice. And so I've been looking at whiteness also and culture, my own culture, trying to tease out what are those culture, what is my culture, what are my cultures, and how do those cultures come up against relationships with the environment? Where did we come from? This is one of those theories of whiteness. Number 671. There really aren't, I don't know how many there are. Okay. Unfinished project. Theories of whiteness. When she asks about culture, I think of my maternal grandmother, our Swiss relatives waiting for her to lift a spoon so they could eat. And she, oblivious, the American cousin, collared by dementia, her 12 pairs of shoes and instant Swiss cocoa, suitcase full of California oranges, navels talking. Was her lipstick straight? Did every setting strain to lift fork to face, or was it just my impatience? We were odd ducks. In a church of another language, Grandma, her hands framing a stranger's face, saying, "You look like my mother." Or later, locked in the bathroom, unable to get the door open, standing on the toilet, yelling for help, nothing latches in the old way. How she explains in English that her German is really Swiss, though she has access to neither. Grandma uses euphemism, fills her purse with packaged jellies, cubes of sugar, doesn't mention the Homestead Act. When we ask why our ancestors left, she says, for a better life, of course. And who can forgive the blue blaze pouring from these hills of ice? Boulders rolled by a drunken god, women with balled up fists for calves, the obedience of stacked wood, the borrowed space of cemeteries. And what was Nebraska to her but flatness unseen, blown dust in the eyes of God? We swept our paradise and kept it clean. And I'm just going to read a couple more, switch the tone a little here at the end. This is a new poem that I've been writing in the 30-30 challenge for April. How many of you try to do that? Anyone else? I really end up with like 4 poems every time, but here's something. Seneca Lake haiku. And I started working on this project when we had the big fight at Seneca Lake, and some of us started writing haiku that we were, yay, Barb wrote some haiku, and that we were posting on Twitter, because they fit on Twitter. So here are some new ones. Seneca Lake haiku. Propane trucks idle, one more hour, one more day, daffodils in bloom. crow caucus darkly awake as wind blows across hungry water. Break into applause, shiver of wind through maple, an oriole sings. A child learning her letters, a hand-painted sign. I am the lake I love. And there are two more. Short one. Finger Lakes Forest. My husband and I love collecting mushrooms. Are there any other mushroom enthusiasts out there? Yeah. Okay. Finger Lakes Forest. See how lightning writes its love for thunder in strands of mycelium running beneath our feet. And how the mind of this forest sends shivers through the trees, electrochemical nutrients that recognize the soles of our feet. Clumsy though we are, forgetful though we are, recognizable still by this forest. And this is my last one. Poem for the TSA officers who rifled our bags to dump our homemade jam we were carrying as gifts. And I've been reading this a lot lately because it's one of the more uplifting poems I have. A poem of resistance, shall we say. That's the end. Oh, quick, we need the word poem of resistance, right? Sorry. Poem for the TSA officers who rifled our bags to dump the homemade jam we were carrying as gifts. You never can tell what those peaches were doing naked together in that Guatemalan basket. Or how the moon whispered to an underground of resurgent garlic, winters when you thought the living world asleep. Beware the last red peppers of autumn, how they fatten into gorgeous fists raised in dawn and solidarity. Trust not the pickled relish. Keep an eye on those candied beets. Know that the bees are amassing in goldenrod, hoping to keep their queen alive, as battalions of crickets play violin in the tall and anonymous grass. Trust not the sweat, sticky kitchen, uprising of steam as grapes roil into a delirium of kettle-shaking goodness. Keep an eye on that elder who ladles the whole sweet mess into a bell choir of singing jars, each ping rousing unexplainable delight. Know that in kitchens throughout this land, such sweetness is gathering daily.